Hey everybody, Mark Lee here, and Low Profile is back for part 2 of Season 4 after taking a breather. On today's show, Gretchen Christopher of the iconic 1950s and 60s pop vocal group The Fleetwoods returns to the show. Gretchen talks about that band's formation and rise straight to the top of the charts and her solo career that followed. The Fleetwoods were comprised of Gretchen Christopher, Barbara Ellis, and Gary Troxell, and they were the first group to hit number 1 twice on the Billboard Hot 100 charts in a single year. They were an international success thanks to their tight harmonies, rich sounds, and classic songs like Come Softly to Me and Mr. Blue. Gretchen has lived all over this country, but has settled back here in Olympia, Washington, where we produce this program. We first met about a year ago when she came to my all-vinyl yard sale looking for Fleetwood's albums. And I think the fact that I told her I did have some in the house, but they were not for sale, might have helped me score enough points to land an interview with a living legend such as herself. Back in January of 2021, she invited my BFF/guest engineer Andrew Ebright and I to the deck of her home to record this interview on location. Andrew came back a few days after that and recorded her doing a new song on the piano, which you'll hear later. He also got it on video. That's available on this episode's website. You can find that at lowprofilepodcast.com. You won't be hearing music clips throughout the show. Instead, you'll hear entire songs, but not the big hits like Come Softly or Mr. Blue, which are fantastic and belong in every record collection. Instead, I'm going to share a couple deep cuts from the Fleetwoods. Their version of the classic doo-wop song We Belong Together from the Mr. Blue album, and a demo version of Happy Happy Birthday. We'll also hear the title track from her Gretchen's Sweet 16 album, which you can find at goldcupmusic.com. After that, I'm going to play the Christmas bonus episode we taped together last year, where she talks about her single Christmas Is You. Because, you know, Christmas in July, right? Right? The original illustration of Gretchen for this episode was drawn by Taylor W. Rushing. You can see more of his artwork on the web at taylorwrushing.com. If you like the show and want to hear more, check out the liner notes, relevant links, and other extras, or contact me. You can visit this show's website. Again, that's lowprofilepodcast.com. We're on the social medias too at lowpropodcast. And now, without further ado, my good people, it's Gretchen Christopher. Hello and welcome to Low Profile. I'm Mark Lee, your host, and today I am joined once again by Gretchen Christopher, who in the late 1950s started a band called the Fleetwoods that rose to the top of the Billboard charts. Gretchen, welcome back.
Thank you.
Y'all had about, was it 11 Billboard Top 100 hits?
Yes, I think 9 of those were top 40, 3 were top 10, and 2 of those were number 1.
And that's Mr. Blue, and before that, your very first single.
Come Softly to Me. I called it Come Softly when I wrote it.
Yeah, and that went straight to the top. First single.
Isn't that amazing?
Wasn't that weird? How old were you when that happened?
Well, I was 18 when I wrote it and arranged it in counterpoint to the dum-dum-dum-doo-dum that this guy was singing as he walked me downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was 18 when we recorded it. And I was 18 when we went on our first tour. I left Whitman College after a semester. I had promised I would go without an argument because I argued before, don't take me out now. It's cost me so much emotionally to sink my teeth into college when all I really want to do is perform. But now that, So Bob Reisdorf, our producer, said, if it hits nationally, you'll leave without an argument. I said, okay. 3 days into my second semester, it was hitting nationally, and so I left without an argument.
Wow.
Yeah, I turned 19 on that tour. I was 18 when we started. I turned 19 in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's just like throwing the kid into the water, seeing if they can swim, pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, had you been writing songs before that one hit?
No, I wrote one when I was 5, something about, and my dad notated it. And it was something about walking down the street and the birds go tweet, tweet, tweet. Somewhere I have that in a little spiral music notebook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But that otherwise, it was the first. Come Softly was.
So we are on Gretchen's deck out by the water in Olympia, Washington, and right now we have a military helicopter of some kind flying overhead on this otherwise serene afternoon.
Yeah, I think they come over every day.
Yeah.
I'm not usually outside, but we're blessed with some sunshine, some light.
Must be quitting time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope you can see the beautiful bay. This is why I feel very, very blessed always to be here. But it looked 5 years to find this place because my dad had looked 10 years to find a farm on the bay, 10 acres on 500 feet of salt waterfront. The next inlet over, I looked for 5 to try to give my children what I had.
So you have a history here in Olympia.
Yes.
And you've lived lots of other places.
I left Whitman and went on tour, and when I came back, I got an apartment in Seattle, and and I got married somewhere along the way up there. Exactly a year and a half. We got married December 23rd, and the divorce was final June 23rd. And I moved to Hollywood then because the company had been bought. Dalton Records. It was originally Dolphin Records. And Come Softly to Me was the first release on that. It went to #1. And then everybody wanted to buy the Fleetwoods contract. But if Dolphin had sold our contract, then they'd be an empty shell. So then we had 2 more hits, Graduation's Here, which Barbara and I had written for our senior class party, because after we performed Come Softly a cappella with Gary's Dum 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 Doo Dum as our backup, the kids liked it so much. 1,500 students and teachers in the biggest auditorium that Olympia had at that time. And it's kind of changing the subject, but when it was no more at the school, then Olympia really didn't have an auditorium where it could have symphonies or opera or whatever.
Yeah.
So my mom, Helen Christopher, worked like 13 years on trying to get an auditorium for cultural arts. And eventually, making a long story short, eventually the Washington Center finally became a reality.
So she really cared about the arts.
Really did. And my dad, too. He played in the Olympia Symphony for 33 years.
In the liner notes for Gretchen's Sweet 16, you mentioned growing up with chamber music in your house.
Right.
And it seems like you mostly gravitated toward the piano.
Yes. Yeah, I've never tried to play guitar or anything. Yeah, and I bought a grand piano and have a grand piano here. This is kind of crazy, but you'd think I'd be playing all the time. But the idea of playing, if you were brought up with a work ethic, which somehow I was, well, then playing is like playing hooky from work. And so...
Sure. You're off the clock.
I don't know. I should be doing something that I don't like to do, like income tax or something of that sort. Yeah.
You're mine, and we belong together. Yes, we belong together for all eternity. You're mine, your lips belong to me. Yes, they belong to only me for all eternity. always be mine, mine, you're mine, and we belong together. Yes, we belong together for all eternity.
You were starting to talk about your first tour that you went on, but what was the music community in Olympia in particular like at that time? I mean, I'm sure people already knew you, but now are you becoming like more of a household name and like, oh look, there she is. That's the lady from the Fleetwoods.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we toured. So by the time we got to New York to do the Dick Clark show, which was our first nationwide appearance, Frankie Avalon stepped out of the shadows and said, "Congratulations," as we were about to enter the little theater on, I think it's 44th Street or something. "Congratulations, Come Softly to Me just knocked Venus out of the #1 spot."
Wow.
Venus was his #1 hit. He was very gracious.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you knocked Venus right out of the sky.
Yeah.
Was he on the same, are we talking about American Bandstand?
No, American Bandstand was the daytime show.
Okay.
Very famous and all. And we did do that as well, but later in Philadelphia. But this was New York, and it was the evening show. And so the skirts and sweater sets that we had bought for the occasion, suddenly Bob Reisdorf realized that was too informal and took us out for a mad dash of shopping to get gowns for the Saturday night more formal show. And we didn't like these gowns at all. Best & Company was the place. But and we get shocks walking across the carpet and then touching the elevator button, because it would create electricity. But anyway, finally Bob said, we'll take 2 of those. And they were $100 a piece. And in 1959, that was like $1,000 now. We wore them for that show. I told you we didn't like them. And she had a neat idea for redesigning them, which we had done in Seattle. So they were sort of little Bo Peep skirts, the shorter skirts, and take off these cap sleeves that were very matronly, we thought. Mm-hmm. It did have rather a plunging neckline. We didn't change that, but put spaghetti straps of rhinestones instead of these matronly sleeves. And they were really quite darling. And we wore those then at the end of the year, in November, when we did the Dick Clark show again, because Mr. Blue was #1, making us the first group in the world to have 2 #1 hits top the Billboard Hot 100 in a single year, 1959.
Wow.
There were pictures taken at the end of that show with Dick Clark, presenting us with 2 gold records each, for Come Softly to Me and Mr. Blue. So that's when we were wearing the redesigned version, which was really nice. In the house, I have a picture of Dick Clark and me in those, where I'm wearing that gown. And I donated mine to the State Capitol Museum here in Olympia.
Oh.
I also donated a whole set of our albums. I think at that time it was either 11 or 12, and then when another came out, I believe the curator of the museum bought another album or 2 to keep it up to date.
How many Hall of Fames have you been inducted in?
I
know you've got the vocal group Hall of Fame.
Right.
Doo-wop Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Olympia High School Alumni Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. And the vocal group Hall of Fame, or did you say that?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. That was the last one that I attended, and I had hoped that all of us could attend and have sort of a reunion and sing together and everything, and but it didn't happen. I was the only one who attended and who performed, and then 2 members, second-generation members of the Modernaires. And the original lead singer, whose face I can remember so well from the screen, from the movies, one of her daughters was singing. In fact, I think two of her daughters were, and another young man. And so I needed somebody to sing the dum-dums and harmonize, and they were enlisted, so to speak, and they were great.
Oh, good.
And then somebody else said to me, I could sing it, because we did it on our album. And that was Manhattan Transfer was the group. And I thanked him very much, but I said, they've already rehearsed and they're doing just fine, but thank you. And I said, I'd love to hear your recording. And so he sent me that and a solo album that he had done at the same time I did my solo album. So I was particularly interested in comparing the two, how he did his and would I have done it that way or not. Mm-hmm. And at some point, Manhattan Transfer was at the Washington Center, and I sent a note and let him know that I would be there. And they very graciously acknowledged me, introduced me to the audience. I was in the front row and in the midst of their concert, which was sweet. And then I went backstage and we got some photos, and there's one on my mantle. And unfortunately, that on the mantle are pictures of people who have passed on, and he's one of them. Yeah. And my brother and my sis-in-love, as she called herself, instead of sister-in-law. Mm-hmm. And this pandemic has, every day I miss my dance partner, Chuck Dreyer. Not so much as a dance partner, but I called him my guardian angel, and you may remember if you read the liner notes that he would anticipate my needs before I would even realize, yes, I'm going to need that.
Yeah.
And he said something like, well, if I can't have a romantic relationship with you, then I'll be the best friend you could want. And he truly was. He was just, and I miss him every day. And another friend also died about a week after him. I had done my show, my 20th leap year birthday concert, February 29th of this last year.
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, we didn't touch on that, but you're a leap year birthday.
I am.
And so Sweet 16 was referring to several things when
Yes.
we're talking about your solo record.
Mm-hmm. Oh, is that what we're...
Yeah.
Oh.
We've got it's a suite of 16 songs.
Right.
And on the cover is a picture of you at 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you released it in tandem with your 16th leap year birthday.
That's right. And I thought, Markley, that I could do that album in a month, because after all, I'd been recording all my teenage and adult life. Not all my teenage, but, from the time I was 18. And instead of taking a month so that I could release it on February 29th, it took 3.5 years. Mm. And I barely made it before my next birthday. Thank goodness I was 16 for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was 16, you were 18, the older man in my life. We fell in love for the very first time. Who knew it would last all your life? I went my way, pursued all my dreams, reached the unreachable star. Left you behind, never looked back, never dreamed you still loved from afar. Then decades later you wrote me still thirsty. Months later we met, reread our old yearbooks, the history of our love affair. Tasted the kisses and toasted the moment, slept separately, still unaware. If your burning love could rekindle my own, and somehow my flame would be lit, I cried as I thanked you for making it right. After all of these years, I felt it. Now I'm sweet 16, you're my older man, like a couple of kids from the past. Laughter and love make our lives like a movie. Could our first love become our last? Yes, I'm sweet 16, you're my older man, but not just the same as before. No more, Mr. Blue, you've come softly to me, so our first love could grow even more.
And I'm so glad I did that album. It was so much work because it was my concept. I designed it. I wrote the songs and decided what order they would go in to tell our story. Some I had written before, like Come Softly and a cappella and Graduation's Here, and then the Come Softly to Me, the hit version.
You did other songs that you'd written during your tenure with the Fleetwoods, and then some that you had written later on.
Right.
And was this the first recordings of all those songs that you had written in the interim?
Yes.
The quiet period, so to speak?
Right. It was for instance, Blues Go Away was the first Fleetwood solo, and that was on our 4th album.
Meaning the first song that you sang without any backup
Exactly.
vocals.
Exactly.
And you wrote that one. Right.
And it was, when I wrote it, it was when we first moved to Hollywood to record, and we were put up in this hotel, Carolina Pines, I think it was called. And it just came out of me as a cry against the walls of the motel room. I've got the blues, a sickness much too bad to cure with booze. And so I'll open up my heart that you may look and laugh or weep as you choose. Blues, go away. Bad news, here to stay. In the black and blue of night, I cry and hope I'll never face the day. Oh, 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 oh.
Straight from the heart.
It was, and so it was fitting that it ended up being a solo, because nobody else went through the pain that I did that brought that song out of me. But I wrote it in a car, alone in a parked car. I don't know if it was a rental car, I don't remember. At night, all alone. And when I finished it, I said, I've written a standard. And I was happy about that.
Yeah.
And so, although that was on our fourth album, four out of eventually 15 albums, I re-recorded it for my solo CD.
Sure.
And when I recorded it the first time, we had been flown down to California, and we would always get laryngitis when we go down from the smog, you know. And Bob Reisdorf would take us to a doctor, and there really wasn't much that could be done. But because of that laryngitis, when I did Blues Go Away as a solo, Bob Reisdorf said to Eddie Bracken, the engineer, well, what are we going to do about her hoarse voice? And then they decided, it's okay. It sounds like she's been up all night crying. So it has its own charm.
The Fleetwoods released 15 albums. Did you originally work with albums in mind, or was it singles?
It was singles, you know, and to put 2 number-1 hits on an album was unheard of. Really, there should have been 3 albums put out for our 3 hits that year.
And what went into choosing the repertoire? Because you didn't write all the songs, right?
No. And to Bob Reisdorf's credit, he encouraged us to write more songs. He said, because, you know, even if they're not hits, you'll make money because they'll be on the albums. But we just weren't motivated. I know I was never motivated by money. I mean, that may sound odd. I wanted to be treated fairly and paid every penny I was owed of the tiny little bit that they paid us. But I wouldn't, I was going to say I wouldn't write for money, which would be like prostituting oneself or something. I mean, that's silly. But the point is, like Blues Go Away, as you said, it really came from the depths of me. I shortened that up by the way I went from the beginning to the last verse. I didn't know I was going to be singing, but I was moved.
Yeah, there's, you know, some people feel like a career songwriter, and then other people, songs happen to them, and that's where it comes from. And back to your solo record, it's very much a narrative. It's a really special thing when one person can thread together songs to tell a story.
Thank you. Yeah, that was important to me.
And this is the story of reconnecting with your first love and all the things that happened along the way.
Mm-hmm. And Blues Go Away comes after a failed marriage and then moving to Hollywood to record. And I didn't have any friends there, by the way.
In Hollywood?
Right. I mean, girlfriends, you know. I mean, I had men friends because the business was made up of men. One of my friends, who was the brother or the half-brother of Vic Dana, whom Barbara and I chose to be Gary's replacement when Gary went into the Navy, and we were going to tour. And so we needed somebody to tour, not to record. We did our recordings all together when he would have leave. But anyway, Vic Dana had a half-brother, and he thought we would be great friends if we met. And he was going to introduce us at Tab Hunter's birthday party. We double dated, and I was so looking forward to meeting my future friend. And then when I met her, she was so inebriated that it was like not communicating with anybody. It was just at a distance, and I was brokenhearted because I had thought I was going to have a friend and didn't.
Happy, happy birthday, baby. Although you're with somebody new, thought I'd drop a line to say that I wish this happy day would find me beside you. happy, happy birthday, baby. Oh no, I can't call you my baby. Baby, seems like years ago we met on a day I can't forget, 'cause that's when we fell in love. Do you remember the names we had for each other? I was your pretty, you were my baby. How could we say goodbye? Hope I didn't spoil your birthday. I'm not acting like a lady, so I'll close this note to you with good luck and wishes too. Happy, happy birthday, baby. Do you remember the names we had for each other? I was your pretty, you were my baby. How could we say goodbye? Hope I didn't spoil your birthday. I'm not acting like a lady, so I'll close this note to you with good luck and wishes too. Happy, happy birthday, baby.
Barbara went to Elvis Presley's birthday party, but I wasn't there, so I don't. So that's her story.
I've heard you say you were not a big fan of Elvis, or the sort of I mean, was that sort of a rivalry in that like whole genre of music when you're coming from the pop vocal standpoint, and then there's all these kind of rough around the edges folks that are, starting to hit it big?
With Elvis, I thought of him as a greaser, what we in high school would call a greaser, a guy with his hair slicked back, greasy. And I didn't find him appealing at all. Mm-hmm. He was not attractive to me in any way, shape, or form. I have since grown to appreciate him much more.
But rock and roll wasn't a threat or a competition?
No.
Did you feel like you had different audiences in mind? Or
no, not at all. I mean, the way Come Softly came about was Barbara and I had auditioned some girls so we'd be a trio.
Mm-hmm.
None of it worked out. So after they were all gone, I was alone at the upright piano at Olympia High School in the auditorium. And I had said these girls were supposed to sing In the Still of the Night. Show-do and show-be-do, oh, show-do and show-be-do, if you remember that one. In the still of the night. Well, they just kept singing louder and louder, and I said, softly, softly, it's in the still of the night. And so when they left, and, the audition being unsuccessful, and everybody was gone, then I started playing those same chords, but elongating them and singing, come softly, darling, come to me, stay. You're my obsession forever and a day. But back then, I was singing it way up here.
In different registers?
Yeah.
Sure.
And I thought that the line forever and a day was kind of cliche. So the next Tuesday I asked Barbara if she could think, I said, I'm writing this song, but can you think of a better line? Well, it turned out she couldn't, and neither could I, so I kept my original lyrics that she harmonized. But on tour, I always gave her credit for co-writing the lyrics until finally, because I had been appointed to do all the interviews for newspaper and television and radio. Bob Reisdorf felt that I was most articulate and that he wanted me to do the interviews, so I did. Anyway, and the other two were sitting there, and I was doing the interview on radio, and I said, Barbara and I co-wrote the lyrics. And she piped up and said, I did not. I didn't even know what the word obsession meant. You're my obsession forever and a day. The lyric I had written.
I was wondering if you remember any of your contemporaries in the Northwest when the Fleetwoods were first coming up. Who did you play concerts with?
Well, in Seattle, there were a few garage bands. I think the Ventures, they did incredible things.
The Ventures, absolutely,
yeah. But Don Wilson at a concert for his, I think, 75th birthday or something, and Voss and I were there, and Don Wilson of the Ventures said something about, but Gretchen had, 2 number-1 hits, and he said, we never had that. The highest we got was number 2 on the charts or something. But he had a sense of humor and was pretty funny and cute about that. He's the only Venture still living. As far as I know, we 3 Fleetwoods are still alive.
You're the only one still in Olympia.
Right.
Back where you came from.
Yeah.
The band name, the Fleetwoods, a lot of folks think that it's based on the car that was popular around that time.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's from the local telephone system.
The exchange, yeah.
Telephone exchange. I think a lot of people might not even know what a telephone exchange is.
I mean, how it came about was, well, in Olympia, they decided that for a telephone exchange that it would be Fleetwood. And it was 357 is FL7 or 352. And mine at home was 352-7312. And Barbara and Gary each had a Fleetwood number as well. And so Bob Reisdorf up in Seattle, this was 1958, and at that time, if you made a long-distance call, you called the operator and said, operator, get me Fleetwood 27312 in Olympia. And he had done that, although he was actually calling me at a state house where I had a job for the summer. And so that name was on his mind. He called me to say, we need a name for the group. The record's ready to release. And I said, well, how about 2 girls and a guy, which is how I had suggested we be introduced when I was asked at the last minute before we went on stage for our senior talent assembly, what do we call you? What do we call you? And I said, 2 girls and a guy. But Bob Reisdorf said, no, we need something more distinctive, like Fleetwood. And I said, well, how about the Fleetwoods? That's okay with me. And so we chose that and then ran it by Barbara and Gary, because I was always very democratic or whatever. And that's how we got our name, the Fleetwoods.
What next, Gretchen?
Well, I'm thinking about an album called Times of Our Lives. It could include Come Softly and Graduations Here, my birthday song, Birthdays for You and Me, Happy Pisces New Year, and When We Two Are Married, The Cure, Swing, 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 and then Blues Go Away, maybe. Ode to Joy, A Song of Thanksgiving, and Christmas Is You. and What Time Is It, and I Am an Angel.
Well, you certainly are.
Oh,
Well, thank you for inviting us here, and thank you for talking to us today.
oh,
It's
you
a real
are
pleasure
welcome.
to learn more about your history and music and your life. Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you, Mark Lee and Andrew. I am an angel, created by the kindness of the one whose love you lived with for so long. We shared a passion, uniting words and music in a song. He wrote the lyrics, then gave the words to me. I wrote the music so all who heard would see. There was beauty in his soul, so much feeling in his heart. Now the song lives on, though he is gone, we're not apart. I am an angel, bringing messages to you. I see him smiling with his happiness in you, for he loves you as life. And though he has passed on, he's sending you this song. These are his words. I am an angel, delivering my messages to you. I'm well and happy, delighting in my memories of you. For I loved you as life, and though I have passed on, I'm sending you this song. These are my words. Come softly, darling, come to me, stay. You're my obsession forever and a day.
This is a special holiday bonus episode of Low Profile with Mark Lee Morrison, and today I am being joined by a high-profile artist. She has multiple gold records. People walk around humming the songs she wrote without even realizing it all over the world. And I'm talking about Gretchen Christopher of the band the Fleetwoods. Hi, Gretchen. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Mark Lee. I'm delighted. I can't help but want to share the way we met. It was so unusual. Is that all right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I love to, for recreation, I love to go to garage sales or yard sales, and this summer was no exception. And Voss, my first love, was driving me around, and he said, hey, there's a place selling records. So we stopped there, and this young man came out of the house as we were looking over the records, and I said, do you have any recordings by the Fleetwoods? And I think you said, oh, yes, but they're in the house. I wouldn't put them out here. I'm going to keep those. And
Yeah, those were not for sale.
Right. And you told me that, well, maybe I said first, well, I'm Gretchen Christopher of the Fleetwoods.
Yeah, well, I am in the habit of interviewing musicians that I love and look up to, and here was one that fate had presented me with, and I knew that you lived here in Olympia, Washington, and I figured it was only a matter of time before we would run into each other, and I just didn't think it would be in my front yard. So,
And I told you that I had recorded a solo CD, Gretchen's Sweet 16, and you wondered if you could interview me sometime. So here we are. We're finally doing this. However, the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, has sort of cramped our style, and so we're being safe and not doing this face to face, but doing it over the telephone. I feel much better
right.
about that.
And we're here today. So of course, we're going to do a Fleetwoods episode with you coming up in the next season of the show. But this is a sort of a teaser for that. And we're talking because you have yet another instant classic, if I say so myself, called Christmas Is You. And we wanted to get that out so our listeners could hear it while it's still Christmas time.
Yes.
And this is the first new Gretchen Christopher song since Sweet 16 was released about 13 years ago. It's an original Christmas carol, and it's also a love song.
I probably wrote it in 1979. I was married at the time, and I had bought a grand piano for here at the Bay where I live. And my husband, who was a teacher, came home, and when I had an opportunity to go back to the piano again, I could not remember what I had just composed. I knew it, it was close, but I couldn't recover it. Eventually I did finish the song, and over the next 7 years, after he and I were divorced, I kept working on the song that sounded like the passage of time. It sounded like, what time is it? And you'd have to hear the chord, so too. And it is on my Gretchen's Sweet 16 album. It is the second to the last song of the 16 songs. And when I played it for a few people, they wanted it. They wanted to record it themselves. And I said, no, I'm saving it for myself and to record for a solo CD or solo album.
Yeah, and I think this song in particular, it's a very appropriate time for it to come out this year, because just being with someone that you care so much about is a huge gift, especially this year.
Even if it's over the phone. I mean, that has been so important to me. When my first love, Voss, who's back in my life after 38 years apart, and now we've been together 23, not living together, that's the secret of our success.
Uh-huh.
But we get together on weekends, and I always say, now when you get home, please call me, because it's a good half hour, 40-minute drive for him to get back to the lake that he lives on. And that's so important to me. And sometimes we talk at length, and sometimes we don't, but just knowing that he's safe, and made the trip home on these wintry, early dark nights.
And your story with him is the story of your Gretchen Sweet 16 album, which we'll talk about at length next time we get together.
Okay. And
I just wanted to make sure that people got to hear this wonderful new song. I'm really looking forward to our long form interview that's coming up for next season as well.
I am too. Well, how the recording of this came about, I told you how the writing of it came about, but how the recording came about, I was in Hollywood recording By the way, the Fleetwoods' last hit was "Good Night, My Love."
Good night, my love. Pleasant dreams and sleep tight, my love. Sleep tight. May tomorrow be sunny and bright and bring you closer to me.
And the co-writer of that, George Mottola, died, and somehow his partner in publishing called me for some reason. I asked if there was going to be music, and she said, no, the children haven't planned any music for the celebration of his life. And I thought that was horrible. For someone whose life is in music and you don't include their music? And so I told her that I would be willing to sing just to celebrate his life. I would sing "Good Night, My Love" a cappella on the ship or boat that was taking his ashes to sea. So that did indeed happen. Afterwards, this songwriter-producer cornered me and said, I want you to record my song. Well, I told him at one point in a conversation that my mother had said she wished she had a Christmas album. And I just said that in passing. Well, then he called me up and he reminded me of that, and he said, don't you want to record this Christmas album? And he said, I've got all the tracks, and I've got the recording session set up, and you could come over and record it at my apartment. And I said, no, for many times. And then I felt that he was just trying to get close to me. But I finally did, I did record it with his setup, pre-recorded tracks. And I did present it to Mom and Dad for Christmas. I call it Christmas for Mom and Dad. And I attached to the end of it the recording that you hear, which was not done at Sterling's place. I had done that in a studio. I dug that up now for release now because I can't go into a studio now because of the pandemic. In fact, I did a show, a live show celebrating my 20th leap year birthday. I did that this February 29th, and we packed the place, and that was marvelous. And then everything was shut down because coronavirus.
Right after that, yeah.
Yeah, right after that. And actually a video was done of that, but there were a lot of mistakes. The volume isn't there. And I want very much to go into a good professional studio and see what they can do to bring up the volume and stuff. But I haven't been able to, and that's kind of heartbreaking. So I don't have my own studio here because I was going to, and then I decided, my gosh, I've written the songs, I've arranged them, I am doing the performance of them. I can't also be watching the VU meter to see if I'm pegging.
It's a lovely recording, and I really like the arrangements on there. So, yeah, I guess I'd like to now introduce that song. This is Gretchen Christopher's original timeless classic, and it's called Christmas Is You.
Christmas is near, soon you'll be here. Christmas is anytime I'm with you. Christmas like wine, spirits so fine, sipped from the cup of love, filled by by knowing you. Christmas is here. Now you are near, wise man, my Prince of Peace. Christmas, Christmas is you. Christmas is you. Christmas is you.
Well, Gretchen, thanks again for joining me today on Low Profile, and I think the listeners are in for a real treat when we learn more about your storied music career next year.
Thank you, Markley. What a wonderful thing that we met.
For more information about Gretchen Christopher and her album, Gretchen's Sweet 16, which for a limited time includes the download of Christmas Is You, you can visit GretchenChristopher.com, GoldCupMusic.com, or TheFleetwoods.com. If you like this program and want to hear more episodes, you can find the previous 3 seasons at LowProfilePodcast.com. Thanks for listening and happy holidays! Gretchen wanted me to remind you that you can hear sound clips and order a signed copy of the 16-track CD, Sweet 16, with a 16-page booklet of photos and liner notes, all for the special holiday price of just sweet $16, with free shipping and tax, and receive a free download of the MP3 version of Christmas Is You, plus a signed greeting card with love from Gretchen Christopher. Go to goldcupmusic.com for sound clips, fun info, and the order form. Happy New Year.